Evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's just about 6:30. So we'll call the meeting, Prescott Town Council meeting for September to order, please. Note right off the bat, we do have regrets from Councilor Ostrander, who can't join us this evening. Other than that, we can move right to item 2, approval of the agenda for this evening. Councilor Shankar, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Young, that the agenda for the council meeting of September 23rd, 2019 be approved as presented.
Thank you very much, Councilor Shankar. Any comments, questions on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any member of council have a declaration this evening? Seeing no, we'll move right on to item 4, presentations. And very happy to note that we do have one presentation tonight, or 4.1. It's a marina fundraising update. I want to welcome our co-chair of our fundraising committee, David Beattie, to the podium. He's got some very exciting news for us tonight on how the fundraising has been going. Spoiler alert, it's very well.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd. You promised that you'd get me on the agenda real quick. I don't think I've ever had a promise fulfilled that quickly, though. But we do appreciate the opportunity to update you, council, and the community on the progress of our rink project. Judy Bree would normally be the one standing here to give the presentation, but she's away today. But all the credit for the case development, the recruitment of the campaign cabinet must go to Judy. Although Judy and I have been labeled co-chairs of this campaign, there's no doubt in my mind that Judy is the co-chair and I at best am Judy is the chair and I at best am the vice chair. Regardless of titles, it's a great privilege to work with such a dedicated, organized professional. She really does set a standard in fundraising. So, I'm here to update you on the rink progress. Since our last update, what changes have been made? In discussions with several of our potential funders, with several of our other municipal partners, we've changed from a single pad to a twin pad potential. What that means is, in the future, there may be a need for a twin pad. Let's plan for it now. Instead of having to go back and put another arena in and all the infrastructure, when the ground's torn up and pipes are being put in, to put in a 1/2-inch pipe rather than a 3/8-inch pipe, there's there's very little additional cost. So we asked the mayor and the CAO whether the architects could plan for that. They came back with an answer, definitely, with, I'd say, very little extra cost. If the need in the future ever arises, it can be a twin pad. What other changes? We changed our fundraising goal. We initially thought $3.5 million was going to be the community share. In looking at what the infrastructure commitments are, they've raised it to as high as 72%. So, and also looking at what the capacity in the community is for fundraising, we've reduced our fundraising goal to $3 million rather than $3.5 million. We think that is a more achievable, appropriate goal. And let's face it, there's limited capacity in every community for fundraising. And if we take more money off the street than we need to, that means United Way and 100 other well-intentioned organizations are out. So $3.5 million is our goal rather than $3 million is our goal rather than 3.5. I mentioned that we put together a campaign cabinet, and we had our first formal campaign cabinet meeting last week. Members of council, Leanne Burton and Mike Ostrander, are your council reps on the campaign cabinet. We have community representatives, Scott Hubbard, Justin Kirkby, Brent McAllister, and Al Joden, along, of course, with Judy and myself, and ex officio members are your Mayor Todd, and CAO Matthew Armstrong. We think it's a great start for a cabinet. And that happens, right? Sorry. I never know how to turn mine off either. But it's a great start to the cabinet. We have approximately 50 asked still to be completed in what's called the quiet phase of the campaign. Before you go public, you usually like to have 50 to 3/4, 2/3 of your fundraising done before you go public. We're well on our way to achieving that, but we're looking at, reducing the load. So far, Judy and I have made probably a dozen or so calls, getting those other 50 done. We're hoping that others will participate as well. We intend to meet with the new infrastructure minister, Laurie Scott, within the next month, before the end of October, and hand deliver our formal application to that minister. The application opened, I believe, a couple of weeks ago for the recreation portion of the infrastructure funding, and they will accept applications until November the 5th, I believe. We expect to hear an answer before the end of January in 2020, next year. So we hope with that timing, getting our application in, not the first one, not the last one, but in plenty of time, makes a good impression. I know when we met with the former infrastructure minister, Monty McNaughton, one of the first questions he asked is, do we have area municipal support? We've had many, many meetings. CAOs have had meetings, mayors have had meetings. I can't tell you that we've accomplished all of the goals that we hope to accomplish, but we are closer, and there is a little more work that needs to be done through there. So as I say, we've been contacting potential league donors over the last couple of months. And this is what's called the quiet phase of the campaign, where you quietly go out and take your top prospects, and by the reaction you get from those half dozen top 10 prospects, you get a pretty good feel for what their community perception is of the project you're pitching. And I'm pleased to say that we've had phenomenal, enthusiastic response from our donors, from our potential donors. But I will throw in one caveat. Everyone we've talked to, we've put it contingent upon receiving infrastructure matching grants. There's no way Prescott alone, no matter how much fundraising we do, can do a $12 million, and we don't have the exact number, but it's probably in that $11–12 million range project. So all of the commitments that we received to date are contingent upon receiving that. In fact, one of our major commitments says construction has to be, the contract has to be let before the end of 2020. So when I talk about what have we achieved, well, we've been very successful. One local family has committed $500,000. One area foundation has committed $500,000. One prospect is in for $250,000. One local business is in for $150,000. There's been other community events. Justin Kirkby and the Row have done a couple of events very successfully. A New Year's Eve event, which they plan on doing again this New Year's Eve. I think a beach fest it was called, some others, and they've raised over $30,000. Brent McAllister is organizing a gala, dinner, and auction event June 25th, 2020, hoping to get several NHL players in the area, some live auction, NHL paraphernalia, memorabilia will be auctioned off. So definitely mark your calendars for June 25th, next summer. Also, we're selling bricks as a nod to Leo Boyven, the center and the history that it's played in ice activities in Prescott over the last 50, 60 years. So when you walk into the new arena, there will be a nod to the past with Leo, and there's 250 bricks being sold at $100 each, and I know a few of those have been sold already. So with the commitments from some of our league donors, from the events that have happened, some others just quietly coming up and presenting us with checks that happened not more than a few minutes ago. I'm pleased to announce that we have raised $1.45 million of our $3 million goals. We're extremely grateful. We're extremely grateful for the enthusiastic response that everyone has given us, and we encourage all citizens to participate in any capacity that they are capable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a great way to start off a council meeting. I want to thank you and Judy and all the members of the cabinet. We are naming them a little later on this evening as well, formally with council, so we can get to work there. Just incredible what's been accomplished so far. David, can't thank you enough for your role here. Judy, of course, who's away right now, unfortunately, but wishes she could be here in spirit, I know, because she's done such spectacular work on this as well. The numbers speak for themselves here. Very, very successful, and this is just the quiet phase. Now we're getting into the louder phase of things with the cabinet and the rest of the team out there, more events, and even more publicity for this great cause. You know, this number here tonight, it shows that not only we can do this, and we will do this, and this really is the strongest statement we've been able to provide so far to show that resolve and just how much the community is behind it. So thanks again so much for coming forward tonight. This is just a superb progress update for us all. So members of council, any comments, questions tonight? Councilor Shanker.
I'd just like to say this is great news, and this will enhance our profile with our application. I know that we're, being able to say that we already have 1.5 million committed should really help us get that funding. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Shanker. Anything else from anyone this evening?
I hate to eat and run, but I haven't eaten yet, so I am going to run. Thank you very much. Look forward to the next update. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, David.
Thank
Talk to you soon. Yeah, you can't start a council meeting off and more optimistic note than that, so good stuff all the way around. I'll just note that in terms of updates for council, just spoke to the CAO. We are bringing this back to the council at the next committee of the whole meeting for an update on progress in terms of negotiations with Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. That meeting with the Ministry of Infrastructure taking place towards the end of the month. We haven't set a final date on that because we'd like to be absolutely sure where we are, and as David mentioned, be able to provide the ministry officials with the full application form. So we'll be back to this very soon. The very next meeting, it'll be probably the hottest topic on that agenda. So we'll review all the progress and everything there, and that'll lay out that final month we'll have to go towards we put that application in. So we're in a very strong position here, and I think it's very, very optimistic. So moving along then, item 5, delegations, nothing this evening. 6 minutes in previous council meetings. We do have the one item under 6.1, the regular meeting minutes from August 26th. Councilor Young, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Shanker, that the council minutes of August 26, 2019 be accepted as presented.
Thank you very much, Councilor Young. Anyone have any comments, questions on that 7 minutes this evening? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Motion carries. And item 7, communications and petitions. 7.1, action items. Nothing under the action items this evening. 7.2, information items under separate cover. Everyone does have that as part of their package. Councilor Burton, please, you have that motion.
Thank you. It's moved by myself, second by Councilor Young, with the information under separate cover be received and filed.
Thank you very much, Councilor Burton. Now open it up for discussion. Quite a few, 22 items on that information package list this evening. Anyone have any comments, questions, or would perhaps like to refer one of the items over for discussion? Councilor Connell.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Number 18 is a resolution from the City of Kitchener in regards to single-use disposable wipes And since you and I are both on the wastewater management committee, I think we would both find that this is a resolution worth supporting. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I'd like to read one paragraph from it if I could.
Certainly.
Whereas single-use wipes accumulate in the sewer system, eventually clog the sanitary sewer system, costing municipalities hundreds of millions of dollars in additional repairs and maintenance costs each year to municipal sewer systems across the country. And whereas there is a lack of public awareness of the impact caused by non-flushable wipes being flushed down toilets, and consumer education and outreach could play a large part in reducing the impact. I don't really want to take a whole bunch of time in a committee meeting, but I think this is very well worth supporting by everybody who has a sewer system. It's one of those things that never occurred to me, but people should know they shouldn't be flushing them, and I would like us to support their motion, if we could do that.
Certainly, is anyone, we'll have to bring it back for quick discussion, I imagine it will be fairly quick, but everyone okay with just forwarding that on, asking staff to bring that in back for us? Seeing some nods, so if we could ask our CAO clerk to tag that onto a future agenda. I guess the biggest danger with those things is there's actually a movement now to say they are flushable, there's certainly new biodegradable ones, but they're not, they still cause issues with the system. So good catch on that one, so we'll bring that back. Anything else from the information package that anyone would like to speak to this evening? Seeing no, so I'll go back to the motion and proceed with the vote. All in favor? Motion's carried. So on item 8, committee reports, 8.1 committee of the whole report 13-2019. Item A, there is the set of minutes from that meeting dated September 3rd, 2019. Councilor O'Connell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Jansen, that the committee of the whole minutes dated September 3rd, 2019 be accepted as presented.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Any discussion on that set of minutes from that evening? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And 8.2 is committee of the whole report 14-2019, and item A is the set of minutes from that meeting dated September 16th, 2019. Councilor Shankar, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Young, that the committee of the whole minutes dated September 16th, 2019 be accepted as presented.
Thank you again, Councilor Shankar. Any discussion on that set of minutes from September 16th? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Motion's carried. And item 9, mayor's portion this evening. Fairly busy September. I'll just hit some of the highlights. Attended along with Councilors Burton and Jansman on Sunday afternoon a celebration of life for Tyke Collison at the Prescott Golf Course. I mention it tonight because Tyke was a well-known guy in this community for a long time, well-loved person, and also because it was really nice of the family to come forward and raise donations for the arena as part of that celebration of life, and part of the donations coming from the funeral services in Orangeville as well. I believe there were over $1,400 raised in Orangeville, and then it was significant donations yesterday, and I believe online was around $1,500 through Facebook, so we should have a check coming forward there shortly in memory of Tyke with regards to the rink. Very fitting because, as everyone knows, the new Tyke is a big hockey player, great hockey player, and a great teammate for a lot of people over the years. So sad to see him leave us so soon, but this was a very nice gesture on behalf of the family to honor a building that was very near and dear to Tyke. So thanks again for that, and thanks to fellow councilors for attending that, so many others in the community. Attended along with councilors Shankar and Jansman on Saturday. I apologize if anyone else was there, but I didn't catch anyone at the Walk for Freedom with regards to human trafficking, the fight there on Saturday. It was good to give them support. It's nice to see they had so much support in the community. I believe 50 or so took part in the walk itself. So it was great to see, and a great cause to get behind. I know, Gory, you mentioned it as well to Denise about bringing them back for a council presentation so we can hear what they're doing in the community, and if there's any ways we can offer further support. So it'd be nice to have Denise back for a discussion. Also attended along with, I think, 3 other councilors, or 4, we had more representation there, I think, than Augusta did, at the Aqua World meeting, on public meeting on Saturday, just was there as an observer, like all of us were, and interesting to see some of the comments, hear some of the comments. I think we need to do a little more work here at our end now to kind of clear up some misconceptions perhaps that were brought forward that day. Nothing major, but I think there's some things we do not need to bring back to our council in a future committee of the whole meeting, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. But a good meeting, I would say overall. Good to see public feedback. The majority was in favor of the development, although of course there are some concerns as well that need to be addressed along the way. Also, I just did want to note, I attended the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville Council meeting last Thursday morning because shared services was an item on the agenda. It did come up and was a significant discussion. I'm not quite sure why there was significant discussion about this, because at our July 10th meeting, a motion was presented and passed to create a task force of 6 members, 6 mayors, to look at shared services in the region. There was significant discussion on an alternative plan on Thursday, but I'm happy to say that in the end the alternative plan was rejected. They went back to the initial plan that was proposed with myself, Mayor Baker, and Mayor Loico, representing the separated municipalities in the room. Went back to that, and I'm happy to say they did name 6 members that day, and Mayor Jason Baker of Rockville is the representative for us for the separated municipalities. So I know Jason will do a fantastic job there representing us. But our CAO will be involved as well. He's got already, I think, spoken to the city manager of Rockville on this and some other issues. So that's moving forward. So we've got just another avenue for shared services in the region, and updates on that will be brought back to council on a regular basis as we're provided them as the task force gets to work. So just want to let everyone know about that. And of course, along with everyone else, I attended the great splash pad groundbreaking on Friday morning. It was great to have MVP Clark there representing the provincial government. Also to thank Ontario Trillium Foundation for that very generous grant. And of course, Michael Barrett there as well, along with some of the other candidates, Josh Bennett and Maureen Rankman's competing in the election now. So not a political event, so we invited everyone, and it was great to have everyone attend. Great celebration for the community, and just gets us started. And I guess an update for people at home that may think we're going to be splashing in the splash pad next week. Construction is ongoing, starting very shortly, and essentially it's the infrastructure work and the pad is being done this fall, and then the actual apparatus and so forth will be assembled and fired up in the spring.
Yeah,
Correct in the timeline?
Yep, so in the spring, everything will be delivered this year, everything will be pretty much complete. And then in the spring, to install the apparatuses on the pad itself and turn it on, and that's when the warranty starts, so that makes perfect sense. And then we'll be able to open the splash pad and go from there.
Great stuff. And again, thank everyone, especially the community fundraising group as well. Councilor Burton is a co-chair there. Did a great job all the way around. We're still having events, which was good to see. A lot of people love those events at Green Things, so they want to see those continue regardless of a splash pad or not. So it's great you're still offering those going into the fall. So great community project overall, well realized, and very well celebrated on Friday. So with that, I think that's it for me this evening. I'll pass it along. I'll move to item 10, inside boards, committees, and commissions, and start as always with Councilor Burton.
Thank you. The splash pad groundbreaking ceremony was well received through the community. Lots of great feedback on our social media. Very excited families that are looking forward to bringing their children to the splash pad in the spring of 2020. We had a planning advisory committee meeting last week, and it's nice to see that a lot of people are taking advantage of our CIP program. I'm also very excited to be on the fundraising committee for our new rink. Working with some, I'll be announcing the name of the committee members a little bit later on, but really looking forward to working with everybody to see how we can rebuild our new community center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Jasmine, please.
As mentioned, the planning committee met last month, had a full agenda. The BIA also met last month, as well with a full agenda, which included discussion about the upcoming zombie walk, so schedule October 19th on your calendar for that and watch for more details to come. I was invited to attend an event last Friday sponsored by Connect Youth, and it was in Maitland, and it gathered all the youth support services of Leeds and Breville into one room, so that was very informative, and it just brought to mind how fortunate we are to have Connect Youth in Prescott and for everything they do to fill the gaps and connect the services in Leeds and Breville to help our youth. So I was very glad to be in attendance, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor McConnell.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd. On the 5th, I attended the monthly Walker House meeting, and I was very happy to report to them that their parking lot was not going to be torn up while they were building the splash pad, and they were very happy about that. Walker House has a full gamut of programs that they're running this fall, and I suggest anybody that's interested, give Susan a call down there. She can tell them exactly what's going on. On the 12th, I filled in for you at the United Way kickoff campaign in the morning. Happy to do so. They're aiming for $800,000. That's their goal this year. And they were a little more than that last year, so they I think, stand a very good chance of accomplishing that goal. I was held at the Fulford Academy, which is the first time I've ever been in that building. It's a quite interesting old building from the earlier part of the 20th century, some great architectural spots in there. On the 17th, myself, together with Jack Scholdice and my friend Sean Merriman behind me here, attended a Municipal Heritage Committee orientation workshop, which is kind of a mouthful, in the Lynn Museum, and that was put on by the Community Heritage Ontario Education Services. It's quite interesting. They had two speakers. They actually had three, but the first one spoke so long, they decided that he had covered everything for the second one, so he didn't bother speaking. But it was very informative. The first gentleman, Wayne Morgan, has extensive experience, and he gives a very good overview of what was possible, how to do it, how to get around things, the way things were going. The second fellow was Ryan Leary from Kingston, and he gave us some concrete examples of what they've done in Kingston in the way of heritage conservation with pictures and everything. So it was an excellent day, and not the least interesting in the day was to go through the Lynn Museum, which I'd never been in before. But I gotta be honest with you, it puts our museum to shame. And it's a 2-floor, fully accessible. It used to be, its last incarnation was a bus depot for Stewart's bus lines, apparently. So it's large inside. The amount of stuff that they have from the community that people have donated and they've collected is just fantastic. And I highly recommend anybody going through it if you have the opportunity. It's very informative. So that was the 17th, and of course we attended a groundbreaking on Friday. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilor Schenker.
Thank you. Busy month. Yesterday, Saturday was very busy, but going into this month, there was a Chamber of Commerce meeting where they discussed the funding that's available for communities, the partnership downtown for Prescott Proud. And there's still a lot of sponsorship money available. I think they said they've used $85,000, but they have $485,000. So, we encourage people to keep applying for those community grants. Bank had an open house this weekend, that was very well attended. Lots of people there. We don't realize how many people utilize the services of the food bank, so it's good to keep them in mind. I know that special thanks should go out to Tim Hortons, that all the money from the smile cookies are going directly to them. Speaking to a lady who makes those smile cookies, she's making a lot. Also on Saturday, they had Thank a Veterans Day. There was probably 8 or 10 veterans at the Legion where you just, they were having a good time, and it was nice to thank them for all their services and to our country. The last thing that I saw a few people at was the medieval fair. Actually, it was quite well attended. There was probably 40 or 50 people there. Watching grown men hit each other with swords was kind of interesting. So, but it was a fun day. And between that and the splash pad, that's such a good news story for our town. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Councilor Young.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Last week I attended the Board of Management at the Health Unit, and we're reviewing some procedures that just required some updates. But we also had an interesting presentation from Kim McCann, Senior Public Health Inspector, with regard to radon gas. And the story was very well covered by Mr. Lowry in the Recorder-Times on Saturday. For some reason, Leeds and Grenville has the highest amount of homes with radon gas in it. And I must confess that I was not very well educated in what radon gas is. I always thought it was, it came from old stone buildings, but it doesn't. It can come into brand new builds, depending on what the soil conditions are around your home. It can also come up through your water supply if you're on a well, for instance. Radon gas is a danger. It leads to lung cancer. I think 13% or something of the cases of lung cancer can be traced back to some radon gas. So the health unit will be doing some public education, online, newspaper, and perhaps some sessions in our communities. And it is a significant issue, and probably should be, we should probably become more knowledgeable in it for sure, especially young families with young children that are playing in basements. And one of the factors that was pointed out that today's homes are so well insulated and there's no airflow through them, it traps the gas in. If the gas is coming through the ground outside, it dissipates. It's not an issue. But when it gets into an enclosed area, that's when you do have troubles. So I think if a few hours spent with learning about it would be very valuable for most people. And that's all I had. Tomorrow is our St. Lawrence Lodge meeting, but I'd have to wait for a month.
That's a really good point about that, the radon issue, because it's always heard about it, that it's in the area, and we've got a high incidence of it. It's good to see it get that kind of coverage, because it really people should be more aware that there should be more testing done. And really, I think that this is something the province and the feds really need to look at as well, because you're looking at significant home retrofitting to add the air exchangers and whatever that clear it out. So a lot of people, you're talking about $5,000 or more hit. Basically, that's what I think was compared to the cost of a furnace the other day. That's significant for the average family. I mean, you're talking about a silent killer too. So, you know, it's
Odorless gas in your basement with the air pump goes there, unless you have a test kit, which there are test kits available for this. The province has ponied up some money for the health unit to conduct this education, and we will be doing it starting in October, I think was it?
yeah, really good point. Good to see that getting out there for sure. I just wanted to leave off two real quick ones. I should give a plug to Town Hall Terror. As Councilor Burton did mention, the Halloween celebrations coming up. Town Hall Terror starts. We just got a free preview, I guess, right before the meeting tonight. It looks fantastic. Highly recommend it to anyone who wants to celebrate Halloween. And they start, I believe it's Saturday, October 5th or Friday. It's Saturday, October 5th, and running right through the month, right up to Halloween, right here at Town Hall. And just a quick comment too, I forgot about Legion Week was last week, and Councilor Ostrander and I took part in the Legion Awards as usual. You're always good to celebrate the Legion and give them some credit, richly deserved for what they give back to the community. So with that, we'll move, did you have a comment?
A question, if I may, through you to Councillor Young. You mentioned test. There's a test kit for this radon. Is that something that you buy or you borrow or what is it?
Yeah.
I believe Home Depot and hardware stores do
Hardware
so.
stores have them available.
Any idea what they're worth?
700?
250 bucks.
Yeah.
Each? And it's a one-time, it's good for one shot
To
or
be
what?
honest, I don't know the answer to that.
It's some sort of a measurement in your home, then you send it away to a lab, not to have it process. Sean, do you know the
Basically what happens is that you leave it in your basement, preferably in the winter when the windows are all closed, because it doesn't do much good to have the windows open with fresh air coming in. You leave it, depending on the test kit, anywhere from a few days to a month. The longer you leave it, the more accurate the reading will be. And like I said, it's sent away to a lab and it's sent back to you.
Most people, I'd say, don't know what it is. The Americans did a bigger job on that in the 70s and 80s, because you used to hear it all the time, just in New York State, because it was known as a significant issue up in the northeast. We never really, I don't think we've done as much on it, so it's good to see the education up there. Anything further?
No.
Thank you. So, moving right along, thanks everyone. Item 11, staff, we do I guess just one item under staff tonight, 11.1, that's PAC report from the meeting last week. So that's Planning Advisory Committee report 08-2019, site plan control agreement, 120 Henry Street West. Councilor Jensen.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor McConnell, the council approve the site plan control agreement file number SPC 2019-02, subject to the following conditions. The balance of outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, shall be paid to the town of Prescott. Any charges in relation to improvement and development shall be paid to the town of Prescott. Further agreement and schedules attached are registered on site.
Thank you very much, Councilor Jansman. As the chair of the committee, any comments or anything you'd like to refer over to staff?
Actually, it would be best if we all were in agreement on the planning committee level, and staff made a very complete presentation of all the different points, but I will pass it on to the staff for more details if need be.
Anything to add?
So we can do it.
Pass it on to
But basically, in the town of Prescott, we have a site plan control bylaw that requires anything, I believe, above 500 square feet.
560.
That it go under site plan control. And so really this is what we're talking about here. This particular addition is 900 square feet approximately. And with that, it requires us to take a look at it from a neighborhood perspective and allows us to ask for certain things to be able to make sure that it fits into the neighborhood well. In particular, we took a look at the garbage bins at the back and wanted them to be shielded from the residential neighbors in the back. So that was, it allows us to go above and beyond what the zoning bylaw requires, and it allows us to consider some other things. This particular application took a little bit of a while to process, simply because the owner wasn't quite sure if he wanted to go with an asphalt surface or keep it in a gravel. And so finally, once we went through several discussions and back and forth, then they decided to retain the gravel. And so really before you this evening is great news that we have a business that's expanding in the town of Prescott, And certainly, we went through our due diligence to make sure that it fit in with the neighborhood and counteracted any effects on the roads.
Only nice thing is it also gave us a chance to add one, like he had never added handicap parking, so we added a spot for that. Like I said, most of the stuff's just taking a look at it from the aesthetics point of view. Like I said, I do know that the resident behind the building was very happy that now there was screening around the garbage container. Not that it was ever real bad, but it's nice to have it screened. And like I said, this would be considered relatively minor. But it is nice in a way to get every property fitting into the plan of Prescott, and we managed to do it without slowing down his building growth. So
I'm sure he appreciated it.
I think
very much
so.
as well. Any further discussion, comments, or questions to staff? Let's see, no, I'll call the question, all in favor? So on to item 12, resolutions, and under 12.1 now we have that resolution that was brought forward a little while ago by Councilor McConnell. So Councilor McConnell, please take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As you know, I missed the last regular council meeting in the end of August. I was away. I was kind of hoping that somebody would have read this in that meeting, but nobody had the stamina apparently to do it, so you let it go for this week. This, of course, stems from our high water situation that we encountered this year and 2 years ago, and so it's basically supporting our neighbors, and let's see if I've got the breath for it. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Whereas Lake Ontario and the Upper St. Lawrence River are valuable regional, national, and international resources, and whereas federal governments of the United States and Canada and the International Joint Commission have, in partnership with the states and provinces, a joint interest in the management of Lake Ontario and the Upper St. Lawrence River, and whereas the management of the lake levels and upper river levels falls within this joint interest, and whereas the flooding experienced by shoreline residents, by shoreline businesses, and within public waterfront spaces poses a threat to life and safety while causing severe property damage, significant environmental damage, substantial economic loss, and protracted mental health trauma. And whereas municipalities across Ontario have expended significant staffing and financial resources in flood mitigation, flood protection, and emergency response, and whereas the flooding experienced in the spring of 2017 to 2019 threatened regional and municipal infrastructure, and whereas it is conceivable and reasonable to anticipate future flooding, as was experienced in the spring of 2017, and is now being experienced in 2019, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Prescott Council supports the Township of Augusta Council's call on the International Joint Commission, IJC, to hold public information meetings to discuss IGC Plan 2014 and its contribution, if any, to the flooding along the St. Lawrence River experienced in the spring of 2017 and 2019. What measures could be adopted in Plan 2014 to prevent or mitigate future flooding, and what the future holds for the IJC and the International Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Board. Number 2, the Canadian provincial or federal governments be requested to establish an independent committee to review IGC Plan 2014 for determining its role, if any, with respect to the flooding along the St. Lawrence River that occurred in the spring of 2017 and 2019, the role, if any, of the flooding of the Ottawa River during the same periods, and what the province of Quebec and the city of Montreal needs to do, if anything, to harden itself against floods so water is not impeded at the Moses Saunders Dam as a flooding mitigation measure for the city of Montreal. Number 3, the provincial government review and increase the funding provided to municipalities as the first line in flood prevention, mitigation, preparedness response, and recovery commensurate to the anticipated increases in flooding, erosion, and damages. Be it further resolved that this resolution be circulated to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, MP Chrystia Freeland, Foreign Affairs, MPP Sylvia Jones, Solicitor General, MPP Stephen Clark, Municipal Affairs and Housing, Canadian representatives on the IJC Henry Lickers, Merrill Ann Fair and Pierre Ballon, who is the chair, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, and all municipalities in Leeds and Grenville.
Hello.
That's
Do
all.
we have to read it twice?
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to make it. Anyways, no, that was great. Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell, for getting through that very extensive, but some really good stuff in there as well. So open it up for discussion, comments, questions. Councilor McConnell.
Along with that, I've spoken to our CAO here, Mr. Armstrong, about this, and I spoke to our Director of Operations, Mr. Beatty, about it as well. When we had this flooding in 2019, we never had flooding like that in my living memory, most people's living memory. It was assumed that it was like a 100-year flood, that it happened, it's unfortunate, but you move on. Well, we had it 2 out of 3 years now, so it's not a 100-year flood. We have to look at it as a distinct possibility that it's going to be the norm. And this spring, we lost, in some cases, 20 feet along the front of Centennial Park. And I would like us to have a discussion with Mr. Armstrong in relation to what we can do once the ground freezes and we can get heavy machinery trucks on Centennial Park without doing any damage to increase the rock mass along the front of the park to fill in those areas that we have lost and to prevent future losses. Our entire waterfront is in danger. All of the various breakwalls that we have. St. Lawrence Park, though, with no breakwall, suffers the worst of it. It's very low at the south end, and I know water was washing back a good 50 feet past the waterfront. Debris was that far back on the lawn on several occasions. And also the lawn in front of our water treatment plant, it was back about 50 feet there as well. The other area that's in immediate danger, I would say, is our new Riverwalk Park. The area to the west of the break wall there, which is rock fill, is not high enough, and the waves that are washing right across that and actually up into the parking area. So we need to look at reinforcing our waterfront, and we need to look at reinforcing it this winter before it has a chance to damage us anymore. So I would like to refer that, if we could, to a future meeting, committee as a whole meeting, and it's not, we don't have to do it tomorrow, but once the weather is cold enough to support trucks, I think that's when we need to get at it. We have a lot of rock coming out of Henry Street, possibly that could be used along the front, but I think we need to plan for it and mitigate it before it happens again and we lose even more waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further discussion, Councilor Shankar?
Just a question probably for Matthew. Are we allowed to just put rock on the waterfront?
So, that's the question. So, we reached out to our engineers several weeks ago, and it's an opportunity, a possible opportunity to perhaps apply for funding. The Ontario government wasn't able to generate enough projects to put together to put forward to the federal government. However, that just really started a great conversation around what do we need to do with our waterfront, and in particular, right around the water treatment plant. That is our most vulnerable asset when it comes to high water levels. And so what the discussion has been is that we're going to an engineering when it comes to break walls and long waterfronts is very specific engineering. So they are looking for experts to come in, take a look, see what the possibilities are, and that is absolutely something that staff is putting forward for 2020 projects. Because we absolutely need to solidify the water treatment plant at the very least, and beyond that, we do need to enhance the break wall and the ability for waves. So what we've found is that the water level has been high, but it hasn't reached the banks. Where we're finding water is actually coming onto the banks is when you have wind, and it's that wave action that is forcing it up past the rocks or over the break wall, and then it has no place to go after that. So the initial thought is if we increase the height of the break wall, and particularly the rocks that are along the front with the break walls in the air, that we would be able to really keep the vast majority of the water at bay. That being said, we do need engineering to take a look at that and really understand what the approval and permit process is, because obviously Fisheries and Oceans Canada will have some comment on that.
And it's also the kind of thing that could also be turned into a bit of an opportunity as well, because there are some areas down there for improvement. I'll mention my pet project's always been the beach. There's potentially some options there. There's some areas where we could actually, if we've got to go and do the work, we could actually improve what we offer Centennial Park overall. You know, as Councilor McCollum, the biggest problem this year was that the water was washing up right onto into the walkways, because the walkways are just that close to the river. So, I mean, if we go down that road, do we move the pathways back a bit? There's a lot of questions that we need to look at there. But the one caution I would throw out, because I did attend a meeting of the Joint Commission in Brockville about a month ago now. MP Barrett's office set it up, and all the mayors from Leeds Grenville were there at waterfront municipalities. And it was a very good meeting. Most of the IJC was there, including both chairs, including the American chair. There was work being done towards those public meetings, but unfortunately with the election call, the timing just didn't work there, because that meeting was held just, I think, about 2 weeks at most before the election was called. And once the election was called, all the engineers that work with the IJC, they're all federal public servants in Canada, so obviously they can't take part in events like this during the election period. So I think we'll get back to that. But the one takeaway that I thought it was a very good meeting, and they answered a lot of questions that are out there. It all goes back to that 2014 plan, of course, because we've obviously had 2 or 3 really bad years since the 2014 plan was initiated. But there are real good answers to those questions, and it just involves the incredible amount of water in the system. So they've got to communicate that better. They need to deal a lot more with getting out there to residents and let them know what the situation is. Are there things that can be done with the 2014 plan? Certainly possible, but the one thing they've got to do is get this out to the public so everybody can hear what they're saying. Because right now it's been a situation where they haven't been answering the questions properly. One of the issues, a very small point, then I'll leave off with this, that I raised during that meeting was just their whole communication strategy. If you go onto Facebook or any social media, they've started this hashtag campaign where it's you ask, we answer. So they try to answer questions about flooding and so on, but they're all, and they admitted this at the time, they're questions written by engineers for engineers, so you'll get questions that delve into the real technical aspects of things with water flow at Moses Saunders and so on, when people really want to know, next year, is the water going to be up to my back door again? And unfortunately, that's the question nobody can really answer, because we don't know if this is another, is it climate change, is it a climate, there's some theory that maybe every 20 or 30 years you have a phase like this, where water for a couple of years, then you're back to drought-like conditions. So unfortunately, there's no certainty with this, but the one certainty is we've got to at least look to try to be prepared for it however we can. The one thing the chair did say that day, because this was raised at the meeting, was that they would not recommend any bulwarks or bolstering along the waterfronts because they just can't predict where this is going to go, because obviously it's, you know, trying to predict the weather tomorrow is difficult, let alone next year and the year after. So anyway, I'll just leave off by saying it was a really good meeting, but there's got to be some real follow-up to it. Of course, I'm supporting this tonight because we need to have a voice on it, but it's a tough question to fully answer, unfortunately. Any further discussion, comments? We'll bring this back. Everyone okay with bringing it back, as Councilor McConnell suggested as well, and we'll have an update before budget, I suppose, at some point to see just what the engineers are recommending and what we could possibly approve here, because as Lee mentioned, the time for this will trouble the winter. Grounds are. Everyone okay then? Any further comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. And I will say, when the IJC does announce those public meetings, hopefully later in the fall, I'll make sure that it's publicized very well. I don't think I'll have to do that because I think it will be very public, but I'll make sure councils all know about that so we can get it out there to residents and also to everyone here so people can attend those meetings. Okay, and 12.2, arena fundraising working group appointments. Councilor Burton, you have that motion.
Thank you. It's moved by myself, second by Councilor Young. The council appoint the following to the arena fundraising working group: Scott Hubbard, Alan Jolin, Justin Kirkby, Brett McAllister, and Heather McKay.
Thank you very much, Councilor Burton. Any other comment on this before we move forward? Great group of people.
Just looking forward to working with each and every one of them.
Fantastic. Any further comments from other members of council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. And 13 bylaws, we do have under 13.1, our new smoking bylaw.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor McConnell, that bylaw 37/2019 being a bylaw to regulate smoking and vaporizing in public places and indoors workplaces in the town of Telscott be read a first and second time.
Thank you very much, Councilor Jansman. Any comments on this before I turn this over to staff?
No, a very well written staff report that was presented to us in full by Mr. Merriman, and yeah.
Thank you. Before I open it up for discussion, Sean, we obviously discussed this pretty thoroughly. Any quick highlights on this and what the average resident's going to see as a change or anything here, just what we're doing?
Well, basically, it's the same as it is in most other towns. You know, you don't smoke in the parks, you don't smoke, outside a store that's got a parking lot within so many feet. You don't smoke in public workplaces. Fairly standard. The only thing that was added to the bylaw was the request of Mr. Young that, we explain what a community event was, so.
With direction to the farmer's market.
Yeah, the farmer's market and stuff, so not everything.
And we did talk about added signage, which I believe is already under works, mentioned the
Yes.
idea of those butt stops at certain areas to remind people to butt out before they walk into the parks and so on, so that's all underway as well, I believe, preparation for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're developing a kind of common procedure when it comes to entrance, exits, and so many meters within parks, that sort of thing. And then we'll bring that back to council in the next couple months.
Excellent, thank you very much. Open up for comments, questions. See no comments, questions, I'll call the vote, all in favor. Motion carried. Councilor Jackson?
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Burton, that bylaw 37/2019 being a bylaw to regulate smoking and vaporizing in public places and enclosed workplaces in the town of Prescott be read a third time, passed and signed by the mayor and clerk.
Thank you again, Councilor Jansman. Any final discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. So, item 14, new business. Any member of council have any new business to bring forward tonight? No. Any notices of motion to be brought forward tonight from members of council under item 15? Seeing no. 16, mayor's proclamations, nothing tonight. Takes us to 17, period for media questions. Folks, anything this evening? Anything? Thank you. 18, closed session, nothing tonight, so of course nothing under 19, the rising report. Item 20 is our confirming bylaw for this evening, 38-2019. Councilor Young, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Schenker, the bylaw 38-2019, laying the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on September 23rd, 2019, be read the first and second time.
Thank you very much, Councilor Young. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Schenker, the bylaw 38-2019, laying the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on September 23rd, 2019, be read a third time, passed, and signed by the mayor and the clerk.
Thank you again, Councilor Young. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And everyone's favorite motion for adjournment, Councilor Schenker.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Young, that the meeting be adjourned to Monday, October 28th, 2019 at 6:30 PM, 7:32.
Thank you very much, Councilor Schenker. All in favor? Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned. We will be back with Community Home in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.